What if I told you one of the men who signed America's Declaration of Independence helped shape the nation without ever standing in the spotlight? No famous battles, no loud speeches, just ideas powerful enough to build a country? His name is Francis Hopkinson, and his forgotten story may change how you see the birth of America forever. A name hidden behind the birth of a nation. What if one of the men who helped create the United States was quietly shaping history while remaining almost invisible to time? What if a signature that helped give birth to a nation belonged to someone most people have never heard of? Francis Hopkinson is one of those forgotten architects of America. His name does not appear as often as Washington or Jefferson, yet his presence is permanently written into the foundation of the United States. His signature rests on the Declaration of Independence, one of the most important documents in human history, but his personal story is rarely told. He was not a battlefield commander or a loud revolutionary. Instead, he was a thinker, a writer, a judge, and a man whose ideas helped turn a fragile dream into a working nation. Francis Hopkinson lived at a time when America was not yet a country but a risky idea. The thought of independence was dangerous and uncertain. Speaking against British rule could lead to loss of property, imprisonment, or even death. In this tense environment, Hopkinson chose the power of intellect over violence. He believed that revolutions could not survive on anger alone. They needed laws, planning, and moral responsibility. Born in New Jersey and raised under British authority, he grew up watching tensions rise between the colonies and the crown. From an early age, he understood that freedom without structure would not last. Unlike many revolutionaries who became famous through war, Hopkinson worked quietly behind the scenes. His education allowed him to think deeply about law, trade, and governance. While others focused on fighting, he focused on how an independent nation could actually function. He understood that once independence was achieved, America would need strong legal systems to survive. This belief shaped every role he played in public life. Hopkinson was a man of many talents. As a merchant, he understood the economic pressure placed on the colonies by British policies. As a writer, he used logic and satire to criticize unfair rule without creating chaos. As a judge, he believed deeply in justice and the rule of law. Most importantly, he was a patriot who understood the risk of signing the Declaration of Independence. By placing his name on that document, he knowingly challenged the most powerful empire in the world. That single signature placed his life and family in danger, yet he did not hesitate. The world around Hopkinson was divided. Some colonists remained loyal to Britain, while others demanded complete separation. Emotions were high, and mistakes could have destroyed everything. In this unstable environment, Hopkinson represented balance. He supported independence, but believed it must be guided by responsibility. He did not seek fame or glory. Instead, he focused on building systems that could protect liberty after the war ended. He understood that independence without order would quickly collapse into disorder. What makes Francis Hopkinson especially important is how quietly he worked. He was never the loudest voice in the room, but his influence was steady and lasting. He helped shape early American political thought at a time when there was no clear guide for building a nation. The United States was being created in real time, and men like Hopkinson were writing the rules as they went. They were not just fighting British control, they were defining what freedom truly meant. Hopkinson's story reminds us that nations are not built only by soldiers and presidents. They are built by educated minds willing to think long-term. His life shows that revolutions succeed not only through courage on the battlefield, but through discipline, law, and careful decision-making. While history often celebrates dramatic moments, it is the quiet work of people like Francis Hopkinson that ensures those moments lead to lasting change. Today, when people look back at the founding of the United States, they see a strong nation with powerful institutions. But during Hopkinson's lifetime, nothing was guaranteed. The experiment of American independence could have failed at any moment. Economic collapse, internal conflict, or legal confusion could have destroyed everything. Francis Hopkinson understood these dangers, and that understanding guided his actions. His signature on the Declaration of Independence represents not just agreement, but responsibility. It symbolizes the courage of a man who believed that ideas could shape nations and that thoughtful leadership could change history. Education, early career, and the power of the mind. Francis Hopkinson's journey toward becoming one of America's quiet founders began with education, something rare and powerful in the colonial era. He was born in 1737 into a family that valued learning and discipline. After losing his father at a young age, Hopkinson was raised by his mother, a strong and educated woman who believed that knowledge was the key to success and survival. At a time when many children were pushed into labor early in life, Hopkinson was encouraged to study, think, and question the world around him. This foundation shaped the way he would later approach politics, law, and nation-building. Hopkinson went on to study at the College of Philadelphia, now known as the University of Pennsylvania. He became one of the first students to graduate from the institution, an achievement that placed him among the intellectual elite of the colonies. His education exposed him to philosophy, law, history, economics, and political theory. These subjects were not studied for personal gain alone. They were tools for understanding how societies function. Hopkinson learned how governments rise, how they fail, and how laws can either protect or destroy freedom. This knowledge would later guide him during America's most uncertain moments. After completing his education, Hopkinson entered public life through commerce and government service. He worked as a merchant, which gave him first-hand experience with the economic systems controlled by the British Empire. He saw how British trade policies restricted colonial growth and favored the crown over local businesses. These experiences did not make him angry overnight, but they made him thoughtful. Hopkinson began to understand that economic injustice was one of the strongest forces pushing the colonies toward resistance. His background in trade allowed him to speak with authority on issues many politicians did not fully understand. At the same time, Hopkinson developed a reputation as a talented writer. He used essays, letters, and satire to express political ideas in a way that ordinary people could understand. Rather than calling for chaos or violence, his writings encouraged reason, unity, and awareness. He believed that a successful movement for independence needed public understanding, not blind rage. Through humor and logic, he challenged British authority while avoiding unnecessary fear. This made his voice influential, especially among educated colonists and future leaders. Hopkinson also began serving in various government roles, gaining experience in administration and law. These early positions taught him how fragile systems of power could be. He saw how poor leadership and unclear laws created confusion and conflict. This reinforced his belief that independence must be followed by strong institutions. Freedom, in his view, was meaningless without justice, accountability, and order. This perspective set him apart from those who believed independence alone would solve all problems. What made Hopkinson unique was his ability to combine creativity with discipline. He was not only a legal thinker, but also an artist of ideas. He understood symbols, language, and public perception. He knew that nations are built not only on laws, but on shared identity and belief. This understanding would later influence his contributions to early American culture and symbolism. He believed that a new nation needed a new voice, one that reflected unity, purpose, and moral responsibility. As tensions between Britain and the colonies continued to rise, Hopkinson's education and early career placed him in a critical position. He was not driven by emotion alone, but by careful analysis of the situation. He understood the risks of rebellion and the dangers of submission. This balanced perspective made him a trusted figure among leaders who wanted independence but feared disorder. His calm, educated approach helped shape discussions at a time when the future of America was still uncertain. By the time Francis Hopkinson entered the national stage, he was already prepared. His education had trained his mind, his career had given him real-world experience, and his writing had sharpened his voice. He was ready not just to oppose British rule, but to help design what would come after it. Section 2 of his life shows that the American Revolution was not only a battle of armies, but a battle of ideas. Hopkinson's greatest weapon was not a sword, but a disciplined and educated mind. The pen, the Congress, and the courage to decide. As tensions between the American colonies and the British Crown reached a breaking point, Francis Hopkinson moved from being an observer and writer into a direct participant in history. His earlier work as a thinker and public servant had prepared him for this moment. By the early 1770s, the colonies were deeply divided. Some still believed reconciliation with Britain was possible, while others felt independence was the only path forward. In this environment of fear and uncertainty, Hopkinson's calm and educated approach became increasingly valuable. Hopkinson continued to use his pen as a tool of influence. His political writings and satirical pieces helped explain complex ideas in simple ways. He believed that people needed to understand why independence mattered, not just feel angry about British control. Through logic, humor, and clarity, he encouraged unity among the colonies. His writings avoided extreme language, focusing instead on reason and responsibility. This made his voice trusted, especially among leaders who feared that uncontrolled anger could destroy the movement from within. In 1776, Francis Hopkinson was selected as a delegate from New Jersey to the Second Continental Congress. This placed him at the center of the most important political gathering in American history. The Congress was not a united group. It was filled with debate, doubt, and disagreement. Every decision carried enormous risk. Declaring independence meant war with the most powerful empire in the world. Hopkinson understood this better than most. He knew that words written in Congress could change lives forever. When the Declaration of Independence was introduced, Hopkinson faced the most serious decision of his life. Signing the document was not symbolic. It was a personal commitment with real consequences. British law considered such an act treason. Those who signed risked losing their property, their freedom, and their lives. Hopkinson was not a reckless man, yet he did not hesitate. He believed that freedom, once fully understood, demanded responsibility and courage. By signing the Declaration, he placed his future in the hands of an uncertain revolution. What made Hopkinson's decision especially meaningful was his understanding of what came next. He did not believe independence was the end of the struggle. He believed it was the beginning. Once free, the colonies would need laws, courts, and systems strong enough to hold the nation together. Many revolutionaries focused only on defeating Britain, but Hopkinson was already thinking beyond the war. His legal training and administrative experience allowed him to see the long-term challenges ahead. Inside Congress, Hopkinson supported efforts to organize government, manage resources, and maintain unity among the colonies. He understood that internal conflict could be just as dangerous as external enemies. His role was not always visible, but it was essential. He worked in committees, discussions, and behind-the-scenes planning that helped keep the revolutionary government functioning during its most fragile period. Hopkinson's courage was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and grounded in principle. He did not seek recognition for his actions. Instead, he believed that service to the nation was its own reward. His signature on the Declaration of Independence was the most visible sign of his commitment. But his true contribution lay in the careful thinking and responsible leadership he brought to the revolutionary cause. Section 3 of Francis Hopkinson's life reminds us that history is often shaped by those who understand the weight of decisions. His courage was not measured by battlefield victories, but by his willingness to stand behind his beliefs when failure was a real possibility. At a time when America's future was uncertain, Hopkinson chose responsibility over fear. Through his pen, his presence in Congress, and his quiet determination, he helped guide a fragile idea toward becoming a nation, building justice after independence. After the Declaration of Independence was signed and the Revolutionary War moved forward, the challenge facing America changed completely. The question was no longer only how to break free from British rule, but how to build a nation that could survive. Francis Hopkinson clearly understood this shift. Many people believed that independence itself would solve every problem, but Hopkinson knew that freedom without structure could quickly turn into chaos. His focus now turned toward nation-building, law, and justice. Following independence, Hopkinson continued serving the new United States in several important roles. One of the most significant chapters of his life began when he entered the judicial system. He believed deeply that courts and laws were the backbone of any successful nation. Without fair justice, the sacrifices of the Revolution would be wasted. Hopkinson worked to ensure that the principles America fought for, liberty, fairness, and accountability, were protected by legal systems rather than emotions or political pressure. As a judge, Hopkinson brought discipline, education, and balance to his work. He understood that the early American government was fragile. Mistakes in law could divide the nation or weaken public trust. His decisions reflected caution and responsibility, not personal ambition. He believed judges should protect the Constitution and the rights of citizens, even when decisions were unpopular. This mindset helped establish respect for the rule of law at a time when the nation desperately needed stability. Hopkinson also contributed to shaping the identity of the new United States beyond courts and politics. He believed that nations are held together not only by laws, but by shared culture and symbols. Through his writings, poems, and ideas, he helped give Americans a sense of unity and purpose. These cultural contributions may seem small compared to political actions, but they played an important role in helping people feel connected to the new nation. What made Hopkinson different from many leaders of his time was his long-term thinking. He did not see independence as a victory moment, but as the start of responsibility. He warned directly and indirectly that corruption, poor leadership, and weak institutions could destroy America from within. His legal work reflected this belief. He consistently supported systems that limited power and encouraged accountability, understanding that unchecked authority was exactly what Americans had fought against. Hopkinson's role as a judge also showed his commitment to fairness over politics. In a time when political divisions were growing, he tried to keep the law separate from personal loyalties. He believed that justice must serve the nation as a whole, not individual groups. This approach helped strengthen trust in early American courts and set standards for future generations. Despite his importance, Hopkinson did not seek public attention. He worked quietly, focusing on duties rather than recognition. History often remembers dramatic speeches and military victories, but it is the steady work of people like Hopkinson that turns revolutionary ideals into lasting reality. His efforts helped move America from rebellion into stability. Section 4 of Francis Hopkinson's life reminds us that winning independence was only half the battle. Building a nation required patience, discipline, and respect for law. Hopkinson dedicated his post-revolution life to making sure the values written into the Declaration of Independence were applied in real life. Through his judicial service and commitment to justice, he helped lay the foundation for a nation governed not by fear or force, but by law and principle. Legacy, quiet influence, and why Francis Hopkinson still matters. As Francis Hopkinson's life moved toward its final years, the United States was still a fragile and unfinished experiment. Independence had been declared, but the nation was struggling to define how it would govern itself, how laws would be enforced, and how unity could be maintained among very different states. In this uncertain environment, Hopkinson's steady and thoughtful influence continued to shape the country in subtle but lasting ways. He was not driven by fame or power. Instead, he focused on strengthening the foundations of the nation so that it could survive beyond the generation that created it. Hopkinson's legacy begins, of course, with his role as a signer of the Declaration of Independence. That single act placed his name among the founders forever. But unlike some of his contemporaries, his influence did not come from commanding armies or leading crowds. His impact came through ideas, systems, and cultural identity. He believed that a nation needed more than victory in war. It needed laws people respected, institutions people trusted, and symbols people could believe in. These beliefs guided his work throughout his life. One of the most important parts of Hopkinson's legacy was his service as a judge in the early American legal system. At a time when the rule of law was still fragile, his commitment to fairness and structure helped establish confidence in American courts. He understood that freedom without law could quickly turn into chaos. By applying legal principles with discipline and reason, he helped demonstrate that the new republic could govern itself responsibly. This quiet work did not attract headlines, but it was essential for long-term stability. Hopkinson also left a cultural legacy that is often overlooked. He believed that national identity mattered deeply, and he used his talents as a writer, artist, and satirist to help shape it. Through essays, poems, and humorous political writings, he supported the revolutionary cause while also reminding people of the values behind it. His ability to communicate ideas in accessible and engaging ways helped spread unity at a time when public morale was constantly tested. Perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of Hopkinson's legacy is his connection to American symbolism. He claimed to have helped design early versions of the American flag and other national symbols. While historians still debate the details, what is clear is that Hopkinson understood the power of symbols. He knew that flags, seals, and imagery could unite people emotionally in ways that laws alone could not. His involvement in this process reflects his broader vision of nation-building as both a legal and cultural effort. Despite these contributions, Hopkinson never achieved the level of fame enjoyed by some other founders. This relative obscurity is not a sign of insignificance, but rather a reflection of the type of work he did. He operated behind the scenes, strengthening systems instead of seeking attention. In many ways, his life reminds us that history is shaped not only by loud voices and dramatic moments, but also by patient thinkers who focus on long-term impact. Francis Hopkinson died in 1791, just as the United States was entering a new phase of its existence. The Constitution had been ratified, and the framework of the federal government was taking shape. Although he did not live to see the full results of his efforts, his influence was embedded in the institutions that followed. The courts, the legal traditions, and the cultural identity of the nation all carried traces of his work. Today, Hopkinson's story matters more than ever. In a world that often celebrates power, visibility, and speed, his life offers a different lesson. It shows that thoughtful leadership, ethical responsibility, and respect for structure are just as important as bold action. His example reminds us that democracy depends not only on dramatic moments of change, but on steady commitment to principles over time. Francis Hopkinson may not be the most famous founder, but his contributions helped turn an idea into a functioning nation. His legacy lives on in the laws that protect freedoms, the symbols that represent unity, and the belief that ideas, when guided by responsibility, can shape history. By remembering figures like Hopkinson, we gain a deeper and more honest understanding of how the United States was truly built. History is not only written by the loudest voices or the biggest battles. Sometimes it is shaped quietly, by minds that choose ideas over fame and service over spotlight. Francis Hopkinson was one of those minds. If his story made you see America's beginnings in a new way, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, because many more forgotten stories are waiting to be remembered. History lives, only if we keep telling it.